welcome to Shadows from the Tree, the podcast that digs deep into newspaper archives to try to find out more information using historical research to be able to find your potential relatives. We are Michelle and Danielle, and we are excited to bring this podcast to you, and so we're going to get started. All right, so Michelle, my article is titled, the headline, Two Mothers to Battle in Court for Possession of Child.
Ooh.
Yes. And us both being moms, we'll see how this goes.
Interesting.
All right, so each claims she's the mother of a boy who recognizes neither. It will take a modern Solomon to decide who is the parent. And this article came from the Toledo News-Bee in February 13 of 1914, which was out of Ohio. Okay, and then I will point out, for those who are listening, that there are pictures in this article, which I just love, because then you can actually link
the faces.
Yeah, you can link people to the story. So there's two pictures, and there's one boy on the left, and it says Bobby Dunbar before his disappearance. And on the right, there's another picture of a boy that says the boy found and whom two mothers claim. And then on the far right of the article, there is a photo that says Miss C.P. Dunbar, who now has possession of the boy she and another woman both claim. Okay, so.
This is weird.
And mind you, me and Michelle both agreed that we would find an article based on, like, missing people.
Missing people.
So, yeah, here we go. All right, so here it starts. It says, Opelousas, Louisiana, February 13. Two mothers claim the same child. Each swears the boy in this case is hers. Evidently, one of the mothers is mistaken. They can't both be mothers of the same child. And a modern American judge has to decide the greatest case of the kind since wise old King Solomon faced the famous case of two mothers claiming the same child. It quotes, "They shan't take him away from me," end quote, cried Miss Dunbar, one mother. "I don't care if all the jurors in the courts in the world say he isn't mine. If a mother doesn't know her own child, then please tell me who does," end quote. And yet Julia Anderson, a typical Southern Carolinian from the hills, had seen the child and declares the child is hers. It's not going to be a battle, this Dunbar case. Instead, it's going to be a battle of mothers for what each believe is her own child. And the boy is too young to realize what this all is about. Robert Dunbar and Bruce Anderson were both 4 years old the same month, and former is from Opelousas and later is from a hut in South Carolina. So, then it goes into a category of the article that says one poor, one rich. So, the Dunbar child has every advantage and pleasure known. The illegitimate Anderson child has nothing. The Anderson child was taken on a trip in a wagon through the farmlands of Louisiana and Mississippi by a man named Walters. The mother says she sent the boy away because he was very lonely. 1 month later, on August 14, 1912, Robert Dunbar was playing on the banks of the alligator-ridden Lake Swayze when he disappeared. So, I dug in quick. Well, first, what's your thoughts?
So, wait a minute.
There's a lot to unpack just in that first bit.
Like, were there fathers? Like, one of them you said was illegitimate, so there wasn't.
Yes.
So who was this Walters person?
So, okay. So, first I looked at the ancestry census from 1910, because that would be the closest to the date that this Robert Dunbar child went missing. Mm-hmm. And in that house was Percy Dunbar, the head of the house. Yep. So, Robert's dad. It was his mom, Leslie. Mm-hmm. And at that time, it was Percy's brother living with him as well. And you know how it mentioned one poor, one rich?
Right.
The dad in the census was listed as a real estate agent. So I think they had money.
Okay.
And then I tried digging into Ancestry, and I couldn't find anything on Anderson. I typed in Bruce. I typed in mom's name Julia. So I'm still going to keep digging into it because it's going to bother me that I can't find them. But, people have claimed Bruce Anderson is a real boy. So, and then Walters, we'll get into it, but he's the character that is a suspect in this article. Oh. And then there was so many articles, and one had mentioned that, well, Bobby Dunbar was returned, I guess, back to the Dunbar family, that he had a pony, he was given a bike. So this child was obviously getting everything that he would have wanted.
Well treated.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so then the next part of the article goes into Robert disappears. So Robert failed to return in several hours, and his mother and father began a hunt. His cap was found, that was all. It was believed the child had been drowned and the alligators devoured his body. A year after Bobby disappeared, several women in Columbia, Mississippi noticed an old cabin suddenly inhabited. They saw a boy playing in the yard. "The Dunbar boy," the women exclaimed. So, I found another article while digging around, and it was actually one of the first articles I found from August 31st, 1912. It was in the Opelousas, Louisiana newspaper article, and it kind of gave more details about when he first went missing, so that was quite interesting for me. And the title of it was "Robert Dunbar, 4 years old, mysteriously disappears. No trace of youth, and belief is that he has perished in the woods." And this article gave more details too about like why they were there. So the family had gone with like a party of people for a few days to go fishing and hunting. And then there's been some misinformation as I started going through, as you know, with the newspapers.
Yeah, they changed their story.
Yeah, you gotta do
several layers deep.
Yeah, so you gotta do your due diligence or just speculate at that point as to what you think when you piece it all together. But one article said that the dad had to go away for a little bit, so the boy was following him, and so the dad said go back to camp, and I guess he went, but then he disappeared. Something else I had saw and read was that one of the brothers took a bunch of the kids down to the water, and then he just accidentally didn't realize he was missing, so I'm not quite sure. Either way, both of those people probably feel terrible that was their last interaction. And then in that article, they had said about 500 people came out for the search party, and then there's a list of all the townspeople who actually offered money to give $1,000 reward for the recovery of the boy. It was almost like a modern day, like what are the online where you can give the money?
Yeah, exploited children.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just like, okay, so and so gave $25, so and so gave this much.
GoFundMe.
Yeah, the GoFundMe, exactly. Of 1912. So, and then the most interesting part that I found, again, with like seeing that picture that the article had, it was a description that they were giving around to people in case they found the boy. So it said, age 4 years old and 4 months, full size for age, stout but not fat, large round blue eyes, light hair, and fair skin with rosy cheeks. The left foot had been burned when a baby and shows scar on big toe, which is somewhat smaller than the big toe on the right foot. He wore blue rompers and straw hat without shoes. So that was kind of the description of his last.
This is the Dunbar?
This is the Robert Dunbar, the real child of the Percy and Leslie that went missing.
So I have a question. So he's 4 years old. I don't know. We have children, like, he doesn't know his mom? Who his mom is?
I'm so glad you brought that up because I have that as a later point because I was thinking that the whole time. Like, so my daughter's young.
Right.
But she's younger than this child. But still, she brings up things from, like, years ago that out of the blue, I'm like, wait, you remember that?
Yeah.
And even when I look back at photos of her, it's like, I don't know. There's a difference in her age between, 1 year to another, but not that drastic that
4-year-old should know who mom is for sure.
Yeah, so it's a great point because I was also thinking the same thing. So I get into that a little bit later with another article that I found, so we'll loop back to that.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's so far as the disappearance, and like I said, flyers that the dad actually in numerous articles that I found was like on a manhunt. He obviously having the resource of money to do these things, he was going to certain states. He was trying to dig up as much information as he could, and you could feel their heartbreak. I can't even imagine.
Right. Desperation.
Oh yeah, that's just a terrible situation. So I think, as I would too, you go and find anything and anything you can. So we'll see. Then the next little part of the article article was called Dunbar's Claim Body. So, the father and mother hurried to Columbia, and after, at midnight, let me just make sure I didn't, oh, here we go. Sorry about that. So, they drove in an auto several miles to the hut. By the glare of an oil light, Miss Dunbar stood over a dirty-faced sleeping boy in a pile of straw. "It's my boy! Thank God," she cried. The boy failed to show any recognition of his mother. Walters declared that this child was not Robert Dunbar, but Bruce Anderson of South Carolina. Julia Anderson is the mother, and she was also brought to Opelousas. The boy failed to recognize her, but she's positive that the boy is her child. So, yeah, so let me go back. So, they get this call from these women that say, "Oh, we see this guy Walter with a boy."
Yeah.
And so automatically they think this boy is Robert Dunbar. They go check out this hut, see the boy. And in one article I found, it actually says that after the mother said that, she fainted. Probably out of just so many emotions. But
Right.
but then Walter's saying, no, this is actually Bruce Anderson, which is Julia's child. So hence the two of them thinking this child is the same kid.
It's like a doppelganger kind
Yeah,
of situation.
exactly. And when you look at the photo, there are some similarities, but I also noticed a little bit of differences, like the shape of the face, a little bit more, but again, and I should point out that once I was going through all the articles, that the time that the boy went missing originally to this point in time when they actually start this case of whose child is it, 8 months have gone by.
Oh boy.
So a lot of the articles that I saw were saying after 8 months the mothers don't recognize him or he doesn't recognize the mother. But to your point again, 8 months is not that long at 4 years old when, they should know these things. So it was interesting. You would hope they would.
How long was he with Walters? Was the mom there at that point?
Yeah, so I'll go into that about kind of what his time was like with Walters. So, yeah, I'm trying to see here. I'm just looking at my notes, but there was actually another article that went into when Julia came to the Dunbar house to try to identify him, and they had like other kids there to kind of see like a lineup almost of like, can she recognize them? And she couldn't at first. And then she had asked to come back like another day, and then supposedly then recognized him due to, like Robert, having like a weird foot thing.
Right.
I guess supposedly Bruce also had a weird foot thing.
The same foot?
It was a left foot, yeah. So
weird.
So, yeah. But again, the boy didn't recognize him, and the boy was being called Bruce. The boy was being called, they called him Bobby, and still like no reaction. And it even got into another article where they had mentioned like this Bobby little boy started being like, "Oh, I remember this candy store." And then a mail delivery person would come and he'd be like, "What's my name?" And he's like, "Oh, you're so-and-so," whatever. And so they started to think, oh, wow, this is really, for sure, Bobby, he knows all these things. So definitely interesting. The next part of the article was, "We'll try Walters." So it was just the other day that the Supreme Court of Mississippi decided Walters should be sent to Louisiana for trial. The Dunbars said that one of their main identifications is a scar on the child's left foot, and they quoted, "The burn was covered by new smooth skin," end quote, said Miss Dunbar. Quote, "See, the child's left foot has the same mark," end quote. The other mother has witnesses from her home to prove her contention that the child is her son, Bruce Anderson. If the boy is Bruce, where is Robert Dunbar? If the boy is Robert Dunbar, where is Bruce Anderson? Can a mother whose 4-year-old child has been away from her for 1 year so far forget the child's image as to lay claim to another woman's child as her own? It's a modern Solomon to decide. So that was the end of the article that I found. But all the points that you already brought up. And so I dug into more to find out like what happened.
Yeah.
Like, I can't just leave it like that.
Who's the kid with? Who does he get to live with? Yeah. Does he get the pony?
Yeah, right? So, and I also had this other thought as I was reading. I said, this mom who's got no husband, no husband, who's poor, who actually was called like a tramp in one of the articles.
Oh, jeez.
And I think she had other children with, again, no fathers. Like, did she see the Dunbar family and say, like, wow, my child is better off? Like, did she play it down? Like, it just...
And why was he gone in the first place?
Right. So, I'm trying to see if I put it specific here. So, it was told that Julia Anderson had... It's, again, conflicting. There was many different relations as to who Walter was to Bruce.
Yeah.
One was that it was his brother's child.
Okay.
So Bruce was his brother's child. Another was that this Julia took care of his parents.
Okay.
And so I guess Julia allowed him to go with Walters for what she thought was a small trip, and ended up being 8 months, and just never, for whatever reason,
never came back.
Never come to missing, or...
Yeah. Sorry if my son is gone for like more than a day or two. Like, where? Yeah. Why isn't he back yet?
I know. Yeah.
What's going on?
Again, does she not have money? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know her life, her background,
power
her
in this. Yeah. No power in the story.
Yeah. So basically, the trial took 2 weeks, and the verdict came out that Walters was sentenced to life in prison.
What?
Yeah, so they...
For kidnapping?
Yes, and I guess that's how the laws were back in Louisiana.
Wow.
Of the time.
So was this because Lydia, right, was her?
Leslie.
Yeah.
Dunbar, yeah.
No, the other one.
Julia.
So Julia, did she press charges, or was the other one? Leslie pressed charges.
It was Leslie. It was the Dunbar
the wealthier
saying,
family.
"Hey, you took my kid. This is my kid. You kidnapped him." And they even had said, like, and I think Walter was a tinker, I think was his title, but they had said that he was kidnapped from the lake.
Fishing? But that's not even a close location. Like, how was he there?
Right. So, those questions.
Yeah.
And all the articles that I read were kind of like, the people in Mississippi were for Julia and Bruce, and the people, in Louisiana were for the Dunbars. So,
Jeez.
But, yeah, so after serving 2 years, though, he was given a new trial, but due to the costs that, were associated with all of that, they acquitted him, and he was set free after 2 years.
Oh, well, that's, I guess, 2 years. But
I know.
2 years is still...
So...
for what?
Now, there was one thing that kept popping up in my mind as I read this over and over again, was, oh my gosh, had there been DNA back in the day, this would have been
easily solved. Yeah. Give me a hair follicle, done.
Yeah.
Blood test.
Exactly.
we're done.
You're my kid. And so me and Michelle had decided, we were going to definitely focus on prior to 1923.
Yeah.
Just to allow for the privacy, I guess, of the people. But I did do a Google search of the Robert Dunbar, and just to see if anything had popped up, if I could find an obituary, whatever. I found an obituary. He moved on to live like a great, happy life, had his own kids, so everything was great. But then I found an article that had said, does it say specifically? It was Margaret Dunbar Cutright and Linda Trevere, who were the respective granddaughters of Bobby Dunbar and Julia Anderson. And they had set out to solve the case in 2004.
And they did DNA?
They did DNA.
Tell me.
First, what do you think?
I think he was Julia's.
Vic? Okay.
Yeah.
So, they do the DNA of Margaret's dad, which was Robert Dunbar Jr. So the missing child,
the missing boy,
son Robert.
Yeah.
To one of Julia's then grandchildren, I guess you would say. And the result showed that, drum roll, he was not related to the Dunbars. He was not.
See, it was too many miles between. It didn't make sense.
In fact, he was Julia Anderson's son.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. And the article was interesting. And again, I only bring it up because it was so public. I was quite surprised at how public this one little article I first found out ended up being. but it sounded like that family, to their own respect, it was split. Some people wanted to just leave it as it was. They already had lost a Bobby Dunbar. Why lose it again? Some were just, really wanted to find out. And so this woman, Margaret Cutright, actually wrote a book. I actually took it up from the library. I gotta go pick it up. But I'm so interested to see.
So cool.
And she had really went into digging into details. She even went up to the, I think it was the judges or the attorney, old address, and the daughter of the attorney lived there still, and she had the whole file. It was like 900 pages supposedly of all the documents, records, and she, I guess, used this to help with her book. So I know.
What a story. That's a great one. Good find.
Right?
Wow.
So, and I think our hopes is that for anyone who hears these more darker genealogy type stories, it's to loop back around and just know who your ancestors were, what trials and tributes they had gone through, and just respect their time. And this is also just really fascinating how newspapers of that time really wrote about all these things.
What happened to the real Dunbar boy?
I know. I'm assuming
he's in those woods.
I'm assuming there was even an article that they were using dynamite to blow up the lake to try to raise whatever was in there. Yikes. And it was just like, it doesn't sound very good if there's bears and alligators, and very sad. And I'm sure they might not be able to find out.
Okay, so my story is pretty local in Glendale. So in the little roadie. So this is about Charles Cummings Krom. Krom. They kind of go back and forth with this one. So he originally was from Athens, Pennsylvania. He came to Providence to work as a railroad agent. So he was here for about, a couple years, and then he got transferred to Glendale. So I didn't realize how Barville had so many train stations, and it was a pretty happening place in 1900. But so he lived at the Great Western Hotel.
Ooh,
right.
Okay.
We know where that is. Pretty local. So this is interesting because he just disappeared one night. He went, it was a Sunday night. He asked a neighbor for a towel, and he was going down to the local watering hole to take a bath in the river. It was called Clear River, and it was a branch of, that went to the mill pond. So there was a Glendale mill that they had dug a pond that they had dammed for, so they could have the mill there. But he went down there Sunday night. It was sometime after 7, and he didn't show up for work on Monday morning. So the station was hopping, and there was no one to take the payments at the station. So they tried to track down where he was the night before, and someone reported that he had gone down. So they went to the watering hole, and they found a pile of clothes on the riverbank.
Oh.
They found, let me check my notes. It was his trousers. It was a vest. It was actually his agent cap was found there. Stockings, which I think it's funny they call them stockings. Stockings. A vest, shirt, shoes, stockings, and they were under the impression that he had drowned.
As you would think so.
Right. Because according to his friends, he didn't know how to swim.
Oh, great.
And then several weeks earlier, he actually had been saved from drowning.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and then his father had reported he had a weak heart. So,
oh man,
it was lining up that he was not going to be found alive. So they did start draining the pond. They actually shut the mill down for the Monday afternoon, and they started it's called dragging. They started looking for the body, and nothing was turning up. So.
And how old is he?
He's about 23, 24, and he doesn't have any dark past or gambling debts. So they called him, let me see what I put in my notes here. He was boyish, obliging, and kind-hearted, always paying back his debts. So it seems like he had some friends and like people genuinely thought he was a good person. So there was no like ill will or somebody out to get him or anything like that.
It all leads to drowning.
Yeah, drowning. Everyone just drowned back then. But so it goes on for a few days and then nobody has turned up. So there's like, well, you know, he did wear this watch. He's been in Glendale for about 4 years now, and 3 years ago, his family, for I think it was a Christmas gift, gave him this really nice gold watch. It was like his prized possession. He always had, you know, you're a rail station agent, you need to know the time, so you always have your watch on you. And the watch and his wallet were not found with his clothes. So like, if you're going in the water, you're not going to be keeping those items. Like, if you took your stockings off, you're taking your watch off, right?
Weird. Okay.
So that's not found. So there's only 17 cents found in his pockets. And they thought, you know, he would at least have $20. They said he had decent money. So they didn't understand why his wallet and watch were missing. So local authorities were kind of on the idea of another train of thought of maybe he took off. So they started asking around, but there was no carriage ordered on Sunday night where, you know, they're like, maybe he took a train from Woonsocket because there was trains from there too. And nobody heard of that either. So his father ended up coming like up because they were from Pennsylvania. He's a chief burgess. So he was pretty well known in Pennsylvania. So he came up and he thought he was going to, you know, get the real town going here and figure out the reasoning. But he started, you know, talking to the examiners and he was really pushing that he drowned. So like, look harder, basically. Keep looking.
Drain under the surface.
Yeah, right? Like there were people on rafts. There were people like there was a section that said they were diving deep in like the deeper sections. They even talked to old Ned Wright. All right. So this is an interesting part that he was believed to have the power of second sight. Okay. So he knew he had been thought of, like they actually had a really good reputation of finding things that people had lost. So they asked old Ned, and he thought that Krom's body would be found near the base of a large pine tree about 100 feet from the place where he had entered the water. So they started looking there, and they only found an old stump, no body. So there was like where the dark spot he had in his vision, it was a stump. It wasn't a body. So
he's not off to a good start.
so old Ned was not so reliable in this story. But yeah, so after a week or so, his dad, Frederick J. Krom, decides he's just gonna go back home. There's no body. He just assumes that it like washed down the river somewhere, and they'll find him eventually, but they don't really know.
It's really hard for the dad to just leave.
Just leave it.
Where he last was,
and he gave the idea where like, well, maybe like vagrants or someone stole those items out of, you know, the pile of clothes, you know, if they saw it on the river, you know, like, and everyone's like, well, it's kind of an off the road, 60 feet in the bushes, like, if you didn't know he was there, but it was a swimming hole, so
there must have been other people
would have known that people go swimming there and steal stuff, so
don't go swimming by yourself, obviously.
Right, at night.
True.
It was August, but still, so, you know, they do have a picture of this gentleman. I mean, let's see. This is Charles. He's
prestigious.
He looks like he's got himself together. He's about 5'8", 5'9", weighs 160 pounds, dark hair. So he was missing for quite a bit. And then there was another story a couple of months later. So this
Did you find this in a different article?
Yes. Okay. So this is all reported in the Providence Journal. There's like a smaller semi-weekly version called the Manufacturers Farmers Journal. So they had been posting stories, like updates, but there was an update. Krom alive. Yep. October 4th, 1900. So this is October. So this is like 6 weeks later, right? So he disappeared August 26th, which was a Sunday night. Yeah. So they found out that his father wrote in and said, I'll just read it right here. So his father has written a letter to the friends in this city. Just where the young man was found is not stated. He disappeared in August. His watch and clothing were found. No, not the watch. That's wrong, right? The bank of the swimming hole. The river is been dragged at this time. What his belief was generally that he had drowned. Although, let's see here. At the end of the article. Yep. His father, F.J. Krom, who at one time was the chief burgess of Athens, journaled to Glendale saying a couple days ago he ordered his son's clothing shipped home. Krom expressed the opinions that this time that his son was not drowned, but the officers and others knew the young man referred to doings in the past and expressed the belief that he was alive and had left the place. So he had gotten a letter, I guess, from one of the family friends that they saw him in Pennsylvania, which is like where his hometown. But he hadn't reported to his dad. He hadn't like written anything and just kind of just wanted some alone time. Like, what was going on with this guy? Do you have like a
he was due to
breakdown?
Go to work, so it wasn't
yeah.
like he like took vacation time.
No, he definitely planned it out. He put
set up his clothes.
Yeah. So I don't know what was going on in his life, but he just dropped off the face of the earth for about a month and a half and then still didn't tell his family where he was or what was going on.
Well, they think he's drowned.
Yeah,
and
they're like
grieving.
Maybe he just just wanted to start over. Like, what is going on with this guy? So, and not only that, I dug some deeper into ancestry, and I found that in
what'd you find?
January 1st, right here, January 1st, 1902. So this is like a year and a half later, right? Because we were almost into 1901. He marries a Marjorie Bishop in Odessa, New York, which is like middle of New York, like an hour from Pennsylvania. So it's feasible he was like in that area for a while, and he got married. So
there's no explanation.
No, just nothing. What? Like, I don't know. I want to talk to this guy. I wish I could like send him a message.
Like you would hope that did he have children?
Yes, he did. He had 4 children with Marjorie. He had Elizabeth Bishop, which I guess they put her middle name as the mother's maiden name. Yeah. Then they had Frederick Waldo, who he named after his dad, so he mustn't have had a terrible relationship if he's naming his son after him, right? Huh. And then third child was Mary Adele. And actually, he couldn't have had this 4th child because he died in 1909, and this Robert Henry was born
in 1909?
Yeah, 1909. So not much longer after. So
so he's only like
30s. Yeah. He ended up getting typhoid fever, and he hemorrhaged. So I found that in like his death record.
So then really no one. This is like a story that like you're really probably not. If this is your ancestor out there, you probably would have never heard. The story because he couldn't even tell it to his children probably.
No, because in his like family archives here, it has like his birth. It doesn't even have him in Rhode Island at all. Wow. So it's like a side shoot of his. So it has age 12 and then age 25. Yeah. So his like early 20s isn't accounted for. So if you didn't see this article, you'd have no idea he had this interesting little side shoot of a missing person.
Well, yeah, you wonder what. Did it ever say in any of the censuses what like his job was when he moved there?
No.
I'd be curious if he stayed in mills.
That's actually a good idea. Let's.
Did he stay in the mills? Or
it was a railroad.
Railroad.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
I wouldn't think so, right? Because you probably have like
to escape that life.
Yep.
Wow, that's a good one.
And then I found another article where the guy who replaced him, George Madison, he disappeared too. In the Glendale Agent, like a couple years later, and another weird story. So this guy's missing too. So I need to dig deeper and see if he was ever found.
Strange.
Yeah, but there was another story, like his daughter eloped and he ended up chasing them down and making sure they didn't get married. So I wonder if there was some bad blood with his son-in-law.
There's 2 cases of people.
Yeah.
And that was his replacement.
Yeah.
It wasn't like decades later, the same thing happened.
But he didn't drown, so it wasn't like
that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
But then
he must have set it all up.
What's going on?
And how did he get away if they checked the records or did they try to see if they called for any
Well, they said he only had like $40 to his name, and they're like, you can't set up a new life with $40, but maybe he could in 1900.
And who knows? Maybe, obviously, the dad reported to the people
Yeah.
of the town, which was nice because people were probably still thinking about him. But hey, who knows? Maybe he went back to his dad and I don't know.
Asked for money.
Speculation for sure.
Right. And then how did the wife named the fourth child Krom? And he definitely wasn't.
Yeah, maybe she remarried.
But why would he still?
Make a note of that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Fourth child.
Fourth
Awesome.
child is a question mark. But they definitely had at least 3.
Wow. That's an interesting one. So hopefully, for some reason or another, this guy wanted out, and
Yeah. Glendale wasn't it for him.
Yeah,
He wasn't meeting.
Yeah,
wasn't meeting anybody good here, I guess. Or maybe he didn't end up getting into something shady. He needed to get out of here.
Yeah, blackmail. Could have been blackmailing him.
You'll
We will
never know. Big question marks.
Yeah.
If you do know, feel free to let
Yes.
us give us the details. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. Very cool. And that's our articles for this week, and we hope you are able to listen and make any connections.
Yep. And give us any stories that are, you're wondering what happened to a relative in your family, and we'll do our due diligence to find out the secrets. Thanks for listening.